Hello, subscribers and soon-to-be subscribers. Welcome to A Manic Odyssey. I'm your host, Stefan, and today we're talking about what I learned in January. Coming into this year, I had lots of goals, dreams, and hopes, but the main things I wanted to focus on was consistency with my mental health and consistency with my creativity. If you don't know by now, I live life with borderline personality disorder. It's an ongoing process, with good days and less good days. Either way, we're healing through it together. What that means is that there are lots of opportunities for observation and growth. In January, I was really focused on posting every single day for my content. I did this for two reasons. First, to prove that I could do it, and second, to see what I learned and discovered about myself in the process. Living with BPD is like navigating a ship in a storm that comes and goes almost without warning. We want to get to the eye of the storm, but we don't want to only live in the eye of the storm. We want to learn how to navigate the storm in general so that we can get the heck out of it and enjoy our life worth living. As we're learning how to go through life in an effective way, it's super important to be non-judgmental about your learning process. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to change our mind. And hey, we might even piss a few people off. As long as we're working towards our life worth living goals, building out the life that we know we can live, healing without harming other people, and moving forward, we're on the right path. So here you go. This is an eclectic list of things I learned in the month of January. The first thing I learned is very practical. Take care of your teeth. It turns out, shocker, that taking care of your teeth is a super important element of taking care of your whole body. Not to mention, brushing your teeth on a regular basis is a great way to maintain like a mindful system in place. Brushing your teeth in the morning could set you up for your morning routine. Brushing your teeth at night could set you up for your nighttime routine. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Take care of your teeth. The second thing I learned in January is that life is incredibly unpredictable. In a state where we have something called fire season, we still get surprised by the season that involves fires. Now, a lot of people lost their homes and things that were very important to them, things they will never get back. So it was a very potent reminder of what I'm holding on to, what I can let go of, and what I want to do with the time I have left. All of those people thought they were living in those homes maybe for the rest of their lives. A lot of those people didn't anticipate the horrors and the things that struck them in the moment of those fires. Those of us who have the gift of hindsight, those of us who were lucky enough to not be affected by the fires too drastically, have the opportunity to put some things in perspective. If tomorrow everything you had in your house burned down, who would you be? What would you want? And what would you miss? These are things that I was thinking about while watching the Palisades and the other fires. Hopefully, you were thinking about them too. The third thing I learned is that the first 3 hours of my day are crucial. For me personally, and the way my BPD is experienced, if I don't get a jump on the day, it can negatively impact the rest of my day. For example, if I don't start the day with my morning coffee and either journaling, writing, or reading, there tends to be a feeling in my head that I'm a little bit behind. Now, I can challenge that cognitive distortions with my DBT skills, and I'm well aware that those first 3 hours are crucial for building up momentum for the rest of my day, not only creatively, but mentally, emotionally, and physically. The fourth thing I learned is radical acceptance is a very powerful skill. My laptop crapped out on me, and I was furious. My entire work is on my laptop. Thankfully, I backed up all of my stuff on external hard drives. Highly recommend. And I was able to radically accept the fact that I would need to change my financial plans a little bit to get a new computer. Luckily, we were in a place where we could do such a thing. If we weren't, I would still choose radical acceptance every single time. It doesn't eliminate all suffering. It does lower it substantially. The fifth thing I learned is that autism is complex and greatly misunderstood. I had this amazing interview with Dr. Amara Brooke, which I highly recommend you go watch. It was like drinking from a fire hydrant. There was so much information. Autism is greatly misunderstood and talked about in many ways as if it is. I know a lot of people who have kids who are autistic. I know adults who are autistic, and their internal experiences are being spoken to and about by people who are neurotypical. My advice to you is the advice I'm taking myself, which is trying to center voices that are autistic. So instead of looking to people who are neurotypical speaking about autism, look to people who have gone through life with the experience of living with autism and what they can say. They have so much insight into their internal world. And hey, you might actually be autistic without even realizing it because, well, we all mask in many ways. Ooh, also, highly recommend the book, Unmasking Autism. The sixth thing I learned is that the road towards healing looks different for everyone. When you're first diagnosed with BPD, most therapists, competent ones anyway, will highly recommend dialectical behavior therapy. However, for a small percentage of the population, DBT can still prove to be pretty ineffective. I have a good friend who DBT was not so helpful for, and instead of taking that and letting it destroy her, she took that and made it her strength. Shout out to Kelsey Packwood for her film Borderline, which hopefully, right now, is being produced. to major audiences around the world. Kelsey, I'm proud of you. And if you're watching this and you think that there's no hope for you and your BPD, there are many roads to the mountaintop. I wish you the best of luck. The seventh thing I learned is that I have a greater capacity for creativity than I previously thought. I thought perhaps in the past that when I reached a threshold that I was tired or that I had reached a creative blocking spot, that I couldn't move past it. It was a cognitive distortion that I adopted. I don't know when, but it was something that was pervasive throughout my writing and my creative process. This last month, I forced myself past that threshold and more than once created well beyond what I thought I was capable of. And when I looked back and saw what I had created, I was very impressed and proud of myself. This created behavioral momentum and allowed me to check the facts moving forward so that when I thought that I couldn't move past a moment in the future, I went, wait a minute, I've already done it over here. It was very helpful, especially with writer's block. The eighth thing I learned is that posting content every single day requires organization, planning, and a lot of help. I use the apps Metricool and Trello to just organize my thoughts. It's great for me, helps my workflow stay organized, and allows me to have some space and distance between the content I'm making and the content I'm working on. I can schedule things out weeks in advance, months in advance, and then use my creative energy for the next month, planning ahead, keeping that momentum going. The ninth thing I learned is that AI is a great writing partner and a terrible head writer. AI for this last month was very helpful in helping me craft a lot of my scripts. However, when it came down to the final draft of the script, I found that AI lacked a lot of the panache and personality that I try to bring to the things I write. So moving forward, even though AI will continue to be helpful, it is not the head writer of at least my creative process. The next thing I learned is that as long as power is being prioritized over connection, the United States and really every culture at large will just remain a hydra. Something that is horrifically tearing us apart, and every time we try to cut off its head, two more seem to appear to divide us even further. When power is prioritized over connection, we lose the ability to connect with one another, have empathy for each other's suffering, and problem solve together. It's a Herculean task that we have not been able to step up to the plate for. But that doesn't mean we can't, and I'm certainly going to continue to try to prioritize connection over power. We don't need any more power or dogma. We need connection and empathy. Yeah. The next thing I learned is that I really hate the concept of nursing homes. I don't know how we got here, nor do I have a direct or concrete solution. It just strikes me as odd that we're so obsessed with how we enter the world, and we take such good care of these infants as they are coming into the world, but when that exact infant is needing the exact same care in their elderly age, we won't all show up and rally behind. We pay the people who work with them minimal to lower wages so that we aren't exactly incentivizing the best of the best to be taking care of the people who took care of us. Now, I know it's complicated because there's money involved. Anytime we are talking about money and care, it gets convoluted. All in all, though, the concept of nursing homes, to me, is gross and unnecessary. And I wish that we as a culture could come together and really take care of our elderly the way they deserve, the way that they've earned. The next thing I uncovered in January was that I have a deep desire to care for my family. I don't know what it is or what exactly it's coming from per se. I think I've just started to really understand the gratitude I hold for the ways that my family has shown up for me. Now, no family's perfect, and there's plenty of trauma to work through and plenty of resentments and dogmas to break down. However, that doesn't mean I'm throwing the baby out with the bathwater and forgetting all the other ways my family loves, supports, and shows up for me. There's this desire within me to take care of them for as long as possible. I want them to experience the comfort and care and safety that I often experience from them, regardless of the other ways they may have fallen short. I don't think that's a reason to not care about your family, at least for me in this instance. And that's not something I used to always feel. And it's something I'm still fostering and understanding. But either way, I'm eager and excited to help my family into the next phase of our lives. The next thing I learned is that I can write every single day. A book, a script, a poem, I can do it. There is just endless words inside of me. There is a well that seems to just go on forever that wants to be tapped on a daily basis, and I'm happy to do it. It was really fun for me to challenge myself to write every single day in January, which I did. My goal for February is to continue that, and actually by the end of February, I will have a book done, the draft of it complete anyway. So yeah. I'll keep you updated on that. Either way, it was fun to discover that I have the capacity I didn't think previously possible. The next thing I learned is very practical. Captions are challenging. When TikTok fell and everybody was freaking out for about 24 hours, it also meant CapCut fell. And that forced me to learn a new software and a new plugin for my video editing software. It was awesome, and it was challenging, and I had to work through a lot of cognitive distortions and self-doubts just to learn it, and I'm so grateful I did. Captions are necessary and challenging. The next thing I learned is don't miss out on an opportunity because you weren't prepared for it. This presidential inauguration fell on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. That is a gold mine for content creation. There are so many things you can make just with that prompt alone. It feels like a skit that somebody just left on the table and nobody wanted to write anything about, which, well, I didn't. It was a tough lesson to learn. Hey, I want to be prepared and look ahead for the content that I could make on days that, well, might be more fruitful than others. The next thing I learned is that the world moves incredibly fast. Regardless of your creative process, things will be going on around you at all times. Don't lose focus, stay the course, and keep an eye on the prize. What are you trying to create and why? The world's going to keep on spinning and crazy things are going to keep on happening regardless, so just work on your creative process. Or at least that's what I told myself. The next thing I learned was how to work a new plugin and find new plugins and reliable plugins. It was fun. I was challenging a lot of cognitive distortions around what I thought I could do with video editing, and it was really exciting to learn what I actually can do. Turns out, a lot. Another thing I learned in January wasn't necessarily new, it was an important reminder that sometimes my mind gets pulled into catastrophizing, taking something and going to the worst case scenario no matter what it is. It's this cognitive distortion that kind of saves you from having to problem solve, because if you think the thing is too big to ever solve, you don't try to solve it. The challenge then becomes, how do I solve my problems if I'm constantly catastrophizing? Well, we challenge it. Thankfully, with the DBT skills, I can come back to the crisis survival skills if I feel like I'm being catastrophized in the moment, challenge the cognitive distortion, then proceed mindfully. It's fun. I recommend. Which, of course, goes into the next thing I learned, which is don't judge your judging. Again, not a new concept for me as I teach the DBT skills, yet it's something that I try to practice on a daily basis. I'll catch myself being judgmental, and then I'll catch myself judging my judgmentalness. That just doesn't work. So this next month, and one thing I want to be very conscious of, is letting my judgments go as they come up, and not judging myself for being judgmental. We're not our judgments, and we're not our thoughts. We can let them go. And I intend to. The next thing I learned was actually to ask a question. Now, when you're in the creative process and you're making a ton of content, you can get caught up in really the process, the momentum of making content, that you don't stop to wonder, is this for me? Did I enjoy making this? When I watch it back, do I feel proud? Do I feel excited? Do I feel joyful? And for a lot of the things I made, the answer was yes. For a lot of it, the answer was either no or I'm not sure. I love a lot of silly things. Like, I love rapping. I love writing. I love writing poetry. I love doing silly shorts and skits, and I want to make sure that I'm not forgetting those things in the midst of doing work that I feel is important, right? Teaching the DBT skills, role-playing when the skills can work, and how to socialize in a way that's effective. I don't want to forget those entirely. I also don't want to forget the fact that, hey, I'm doing this because it brings me joy and I love it. If we lose that love, I won't also be able to teach because, well, I won't love it. The next thing I learned is that when there is a contentious moment, the entire country kind of feels like a very sensitive nerve ending. And that nerve ending can lead to a lot of emotional dysregulation, which can lead to internal chaos, which can lead to impulsively calling people Nazis. Now, I'm not going to get into whether or not that shit happened because there's really no point in trying to argue it one way or the other. Both sides have made up their mind, and I'm not here to take one. I'm here to say that sometimes, in the moment, dysregulation leads to oversimplification and overgeneralization. Whatever side of the aisle you fall on, it is important to remember that there is a middle path for every situation. And when we throw the baby out with the bathwater, we lose the opportunity to connect with people. Now, please don't hear that and think the thing you might be thinking, because I might not be saying the thing you think you're thinking. I might be saying something different. Either way, the world is chaotic. People need the skills, and emotional dysregulation often leads to something that we can't take back. The next thing I learned is that the reason emotion regulation skills are so challenging to develop is that the country as a whole does not encourage it. We encourage emotional dysregulation, oversimplification, overgeneralization, and catastrophizing. When something happens, we tend to put people in camps and keep them there, whether mentally or literally. In the instance of the things that happened in January, which there were many, there were lots of labels and judgments being thrown around that were super unhelpful and honestly didn't bring anybody closer to understanding, just created greater divides. Now, I'm not here to say that there's some kumbaya reference or understanding of how to fix that. I don't think it's going to be fixed overnight. I simply observed that what I don't want to do is add to the screaming and the echo chamber of those overgeneralized judgments because, well, when you overgeneralize and you lead with judgments, you tend to lose sight of the person. And when you're not looking at a person, it's easy to depersonalize them. And when we depersonalize people, well, that's when inhumane things happen. The next thing I learned is that the niche machine on social media is fucking brutal. The algorithms seem to really want to keep you in a box for your own benefit, for consistency, so the audience can understand what it is they're coming back to. But what if you don't have that in mind? What if you're creating for the sake of creativity and people are welcome to be along for the ride and aware of the fact that the process means they're going to see things change and are different? I might really focus on one thing this month and something entirely different the next month. I don't think that is necessarily problematic, except that everything online, all of these social media influencers who are trying to peddle out the content of how to do it successfully, seem to be really focused on you staying in your lane. Don't break out of your lane, they say, otherwise you will never be successful. That just seems like a cognitive distortion, an all or nothing way of thinking, and honestly, not what I'm interested in. I'm going to make what I want to make, and you're more than welcome to stay along for the ride or get off. Either way, you're more than welcome to come back on at a later time if you want. I'm going to make what I want to make because it makes me happy and because it brings me joy and because this is the only life we get to live. And if you're not making things that make you happy, well, you're probably not happy. The last observation is that TikTok is what happens when commerce and art become incestuous. It's impossible to open the app at this point without feeling like 95% of the content you're watching is sales, sales, sales. The constant struggle of the artist is, how do I walk the line of making a living to live my life and making art that does not compromise my values? It is challenging because I am not here to make $1 million off of art. I'm here to make art because it brings me joy and purpose. So if you're feeling bogged down by the commerce machine that has become a lot of social media, stay the course, have hope, and find joy in the process. I know it's easier said than done. Please remember that there is a way to feel fulfilled without making money. And, big and here, we need money to survive. In this current context, in our current system, we have to be able to pay for our food, to pay for a place to live, to pay for certain things we need, like dental care, like hygiene, like physical health. It's a line that we're constantly walking. While walking it, though, stay the course. Do not get pulled into the commerce machine. We don't need it. Art will always be a thing that brings people more than money. It will always be something that connects us with something outside of a monetary value. Let the people who are obsessed with money and art be obsessed with money and art. You, creative person, you, artist, stay the course. It's challenging and it's possible. That middle path exists for all of us, including the artist. And there you have it. That's what I learned in January. It was eclectic, it was necessary, and I'm excited to see how it impacts what I do in February. I imagine it's going to impact me in a few different ways, one of them being my creative process, the second of which will be what I'm going to be mindful of. I encourage you to think about the month the same way. What will you learn in February, and what did you learn in January? We only know how to grow when we look at where we've been to see where we want to go. All right, be well, stay skillful, and I'll see you in the next one.